I never thought my wedding day would become the scene of the greatest betrayal of my life. I remember the chandeliers casting golden light over the reception hall, the sound of laughter mixing with clinking glasses, and the way my heart swelled as I looked at my new husband, Ethan. Guests were smiling, the band was playing soft jazz, and everything seemed perfect. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. But then she stood up. My maid of honor, Claire, rose from her seat, glass in hand, and gave me that same smile I had seen countless times through the years of our friendship. At first, I thought she was about to toast us, to say something funny, sweet, or embarrassing in that best friend way only she could. Everyone quieted, expecting a heartfelt speech. My cheeks already burned with emotion, ready for her words of love. But instead, she dropped a bomb that would split my world in two. "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice steady, her smile unshaken, "and the father is Ethan." The words carved through the air like glass shattering. For a heartbeat, there was silence so heavy it felt like the room itself had stopped breathing. The clinking of forks, the murmurs of children, even the music, it all froze. Then the silence turned into a wave of gasps. I swear I could hear my own pulse pounding louder than anything else. I stared at Ethan. His face drained of color, his mouth opening slightly, but no words came out. He looked at Claire, then at me, his eyes wide, trapped, caught, and guilty. And in that instant I knew. The truth was standing there in front of me in her calm voice and his frozen guilt. Inside, my chest felt like it was splitting open. The betrayal cut deeper because it wasn't just him, it was her. My maid of honor. The friend who had helped me choose this dress, who had held my hand when I cried about meaningless things, who had sworn she would stand by me forever, and here she was, choosing my wedding day to destroy me. Guests whispered, some covering their mouths, others watching me with pity, some with fascination, like they couldn't believe this was real life. The perfect fairy tale moment I had dreamed of was now a nightmare unraveling in front of hundreds of eyes. My mother looked at me with wide, horrified eyes, as if silently asking me what I was going to do. Ethan's parents were rigid in their seats, one of them shaking her head slowly, as though denying the truth that had just been laid bare. Claire, meanwhile, just sat back down calmly, as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of the happiest day of my life. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my bouquet in her face. I wanted to drag Ethan outside and demand the truth. But I couldn't move. My body felt paralyzed, my throat locked tight. The tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not now. I smiled, a broken smile, trembling at the edges, but a smile nonetheless. And that smile probably confused everyone even more, because I refused to let them see me crumble, even though I was already in pieces inside. The band started again, awkwardly, as if pretending the words had not been spoken. Conversations resumed in hushed tones, but the whispers never stopped. My wedding was no longer a celebration. It was a stage where I had just been humiliated in the cruelest way possible. That night, when I closed my eyes, all I could hear was Claire's voice repeating those words, "And the father is Ethan," over and over again, echoing in my mind like a cruel chant. And that was only the beginning. If you've made it this far into my story, thank you for listening. This is only part one of what really happened, and trust me, it only gets more shocking from here. If you don't want to miss what I did next, subscribe now so you can follow along. And if subscribing isn't your thing, just drop a like, it tells me you're here, and it keeps me going. The moment Claire's words echoed through the hall, my wedding no longer felt like mine. It felt like some cruel performance staged for everyone to watch, and I was the unwilling main character. People still whispered in the corners, glancing at me, at Ethan, at Claire, as if we were pieces of a scandalous play. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. My mind screamed questions, but my lips stayed frozen. Ethan reached for my hand under the table, but I pulled it away so sharply that even the guests nearby noticed. His face flushed, and for once, he looked ashamed. I stood up, excused myself quietly, and walked out of the hall. My heels clicked against the marble floor like gunshots in the silence. The air outside felt sharp against my lungs, but at least I could breathe again. Behind me, I could hear murmurs, a few hurried footsteps, and then Ethan calling my name. "Wait," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "Please let me explain." Explain? How do you explain something like this? My best friend, my maid of honor, standing up and telling the world she's carrying my husband's child. What explanation could fix that? I turned to him, my voice shaking but cold. "Is it true?" His eyes darted away. That was all the answer I needed. The fury surged up inside me, burning through the numbness. I pushed him back with my hands, hard enough that he stumbled. On our wedding day, Ethan? You couldn't even wait one night before the truth exploded? Tears welled up in his eyes, but to me they looked empty, like a performance. He whispered, "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for this to happen." A mistake. That word sliced through me like a blade. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, missing a dinner date, or saying something stupid in an argument. Betraying me with my closest friend and getting her pregnant? That's not a mistake. That's a choice. I walked farther down the corridor, my dress dragging across the floor, heavy with the weight of humiliation. I could hear footsteps behind me again, not Ethan's this time, but Claire's. She had the audacity to follow me. "Listen," she said softly, as though she were doing me a favor. "You deserve to know the truth. Ethan and I—" "Don't you dare," I snapped, spinning around so quickly that my veil whipped through the air. My voice came out louder than I expected, echoing against the walls. "Not here, not now." For the first time that night, Claire faltered. Her confident expression cracked, and she actually looked nervous. Maybe she thought I'd scream, or maybe she expected me to collapse. Instead, I stared straight at her, holding myself as tall as I could in that heavy gown. "Go back inside," I told her. "Enjoy the party you just ruined." Her lips pressed together in a thin line, and she didn't argue. She just turned and walked away, her heels tapping against the floor like a countdown to the end of my marriage. I leaned against the cold wall, my chest rising and falling rapidly. My hands trembled, but I refused to let tears fall. I had already given them too much power, both of them. They had stolen my joy, my trust, and my dream. They would not steal my dignity too. After a few minutes, I gathered the strength to return to the hall. The music was playing again, though it sounded hollow now. Guests avoided my eyes, some out of pity, some out of shame, and a few out of morbid curiosity. My mother rushed to me, holding my arm, whispering if I wanted to leave. I shook my head. Not yet. If Ethan and Claire thought they could destroy me so easily, they were wrong. I wasn't going to storm out and give them the stage. This was still my wedding day, and if I was going to lose everything, I would lose it on my own terms. I walked back to my seat, lifted my glass, and smiled. The room hushed again. Everyone was waiting to see if I would cry, scream, or collapse. Instead, I raised the glass higher. "To truth," I said, my voice steady, despite the storm inside me. "May it always come out, no matter how ugly it is." The hall fell silent again, but this time I had taken control. The glass shook slightly in my hand, but my voice did not. As I set it back on the table, I could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes pressing down on me. Yet for the first time that night, I wasn't the victim on display. I was the one holding the stage. Ethan looked pale, his jaw tight, his hands fumbling with the edge of his napkin like a guilty child caught red-handed. Claire sat stiffly, eyes fixed on the tablecloth, her earlier bravado vanishing into silence. For a moment, no one dared to breathe too loudly. Then someone clapped, just once. Awkward, hesitant. But it broke the tension enough that murmurs rose again, and the music picked up as though the band had been waiting for a signal. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure if they should laugh, cry, or pretend nothing had happened. I forced myself to keep smiling, even though my stomach twisted. Inside, my thoughts were unraveling faster than I could catch them. Images flashed in my mind, Ethan coming home late, Claire brushing my hair back when I was stressed, the way they sometimes exchanged glances I had dismissed as harmless. All the puzzle pieces I had ignored before now slid into place, and the picture they formed was a cruel one. I remembered the bachelorette party when Claire kept making excuses for Ethan's absence. I remembered the night Ethan smelled faintly of a perfume I didn't own. I had buried those suspicions because love makes you blind, and trust makes you foolish, and I had been both. Dinner was served, though I barely touched the food. I just pushed it around the plate, each scrape of silverware against china, sounding like a cruel reminder of the fractured life in front of me. Guests avoided conversation with me, choosing instead to whisper behind raised hands. I could almost hear the words, scandal, betrayal, pity. When the dancing began, I excused myself again, slipping out into the hallway. My gown dragged heavily behind me, each step echoing like footsteps in a deserted church. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to think. The night air outside was sharp and cold, a jarring contrast to the suffocating warmth inside. I stood beneath the string lights strung across the courtyard, their soft glow mocking the darkness inside me. A few guests lingered nearby, smoking or chatting, but they gave me a wide berth, as though betrayal was contagious. Ethan found me there minutes later. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled, his face desperate. He reached for me again, and again I stepped back. "Please," he begged, his voice rough. "It's not what you think. I never wanted this, it just happened." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "It just happened? You accidentally fell into bed with my maid of honor? That's your defense?" He winced, rubbing his forehead like a man who had dug his own grave but didn't want to lie in it. "I love you," he whispered. "That hasn't changed." The audacity of it nearly stole my breath. Love? He claimed to love me while betraying me in the worst possible way. Love isn't just words, it's choices, actions, loyalty. And Ethan had failed on every front. Before I could answer, Claire appeared in the doorway. She didn't look smug this time. She looked cornered, nervous, almost fragile. She whispered, "Ethan, we can't keep this quiet anymore. She deserves to know everything." Her words twisted the knife deeper. Not only had she chosen my wedding day to humiliate me, but now she wanted to strip away the last shreds of dignity I clung to. I squared my shoulders and looked at both of them. "Enough. I don't want your excuses. I don't want your stories. All I wanted was honesty, and you both failed me. Miserably." They exchanged a glance, a silent conversation in the space between their eyes, and in that moment, I realized the truth. I was no longer part of their world. They were tangled together in lies, and I was the casualty. The music swelled inside, laughter trickled through the walls, and somewhere a cheer erupted for a toast I hadn't heard. Life went on for everyone else, but mine had stopped. I turned away from them both, lifting my gown to keep it from dragging in the dirt. Without another word, I walked down the path lit by fairy lights, each step taking me further from the wedding I thought was mine, and closer to a reality I hadn't chosen. And as I walked, a thought crystallized in my mind, sharp and unshakable. This was not the end. This was the beginning of something far darker. The further I walked from the reception hall, the clearer my mind became. Each step away from Ethan and Claire stripped another layer of denial off me, leaving only raw truth behind. The fairy lights above me flickered softly, almost mocking the chaos inside. My gown snagged on the gravel, but I kept walking, refusing to let fabric hold me back the way love had. Behind me, I heard Ethan's footsteps again. He called my name, his voice desperate, breaking in the cool night air. I didn't turn. Not until he jogged to catch up and stepped directly in front of me, blocking my path. "Please," he said, his voice cracking. "Don't just walk away like this. I need you to hear me out." I lifted my chin, my eyes boring into his. "You had months to tell me the truth, Ethan. You had every chance. You chose my wedding day to let Claire do it for you." He flinched, guilt twisting his features. "I didn't know she was going to say it like that. I never wanted to hurt you. Yet you did," I whispered, my voice shaking with fury and heartbreak, over and over again. For a moment, silence hung between us, broken only by the muffled music still pulsing through the hall. His shoulders slumped, and I could see the fight draining out of him. But then, almost pathetically, he reached for my hands again. "I made a mistake," he said. "But it's you I love. It's always been you. Claire means nothing compared to us." The audacity of his words nearly made me laugh. Nothing? She meant enough to share his bed. She meant enough to carry his child. And yet, here he was, trying to minimize it as if my pain was negotiable. Before I could respond, the door opened again, and Claire stepped out into the courtyard. She looked uneasy, her arms crossed over her stomach protectively, but her eyes were locked on Ethan. "Stop lying to her," Claire said quietly, her voice trembling but firm. "She deserves to know the truth. You can't keep pretending." Ethan's head snapped toward her, his face hardening with anger. "Not now, Claire." But the damage was done. My heart pounded as I stared between them. The way she looked at him, it wasn't casual. It wasn't temporary. It was attachment. It was possession. I steadied my voice, though inside I was shaking. "How long?" Neither of them answered immediately. That silence was worse than words. Finally, Claire spoke, her eyes darting to the ground. "Months. Before the engagement." The air left my lungs like I'd been punched. So it wasn't an accident. It wasn't one drunken night. It was betrayal woven into the very fabric of my relationship. festering beneath every kiss, every promise, every plan we'd made for the future. Ethan tried to step forward again, but I raised my hand like a wall. Don't. You don't get to touch me. Not anymore. Claire bit her lip, tears spilling down her cheeks. For a moment, she almost looked sorry. But sorry doesn't erase the deliberate destruction of a marriage before it even begins. My voice grew stronger with every word. You both ruined this night. You ruined us. And the worst part? You thought I'd crumble. You thought I'd break down so badly that I wouldn't see the truth clearly. But I do now. Neither of them spoke. They just stood there in the cold night air, two people bound by a secret they could no longer hide. And me standing apart, stripped of illusions, but finally seeing them for who they really were. I turned, lifting my gown from the gravel once more. I didn't run. I walked slowly, deliberately, each step declaring that I refused to be their victim any longer. My head was high, my tears unshed. As I reached the end of the courtyard, I glanced back one last time. Ethan stood frozen, his hand reaching toward me but not moving. Claire was clutching her stomach, her face pale in the glow of the lights. In that instant, I realized something powerful. Their choices had destroyed my wedding, but they would not destroy me. I still had the power to decide what came next. And that decision would change everything. I didn't sleep that night. After the chaos of the reception, after the whispers in the stairs, after Ethan's parents tried to smooth things over, and my own mother wrapped her arms around me, I found myself lying awake in a hotel room that felt more like a cell. My wedding gown was crumpled in the corner, a heap of silken lace that now looked like a cruel joke. Every time I closed my eyes, Claire's words replayed in my head, sharp and deliberate. I'm pregnant, and the father is Ethan. I thought about the faces of the guests, frozen in shock, some with pity, some with morbid fascination. I thought about Ethan's silence, the way his eyes gave him away before his lips could even move. And I thought about Claire's steady smile, the way she seemed almost proud to destroy me. By dawn, exhaustion dragged me to the window. I watched the city lights fade into morning, and with it, the last fragments of the life I thought I had. My marriage wasn't just broken, it had been built on lies from the start. And I realized then that the only way forward was through fire. When Ethan knocked on the door, his voice muffled, but urgent, I didn't answer. I couldn't bear to see his face. Instead, I wrote a note, folded it, and slid it under the door. The note read, "We're done. Don't follow me." I packed a small bag and left the hotel before anyone else woke up. My heels clicked against the empty lobby floor, my veil tucked into the trash by the exit. I didn't look back. For days, I hid at my mother's house, surrounded by the silence of someone who loved me too much to push for answers. She made coffee, sat beside me, and sometimes just held my hand without speaking. It was the kind of comfort I hadn't realized I needed until everything else was gone. Ethan tried calling, dozens of missed calls, dozens of texts filled with apologies, excuses, and promises, but I ignored them all. Words meant nothing to me now. His love, his loyalty, his vows, they were all counterfeit. Claire surprisingly only sent one message. 4 words. I didn't mean to. I stared at those words until my eyes blurred with tears. Because she did mean to. She had stood at my wedding, chosen her moment, and torn my world apart. That wasn't an accident, that was precision. But if she thought I would crumble forever, she was wrong. The turning point came when one of my friends, a bridesmaid, visited me. She looked at me with fierce determination and said, "You don't deserve to hide. You deserve to stand tall. Make them see you won't be destroyed." Her words lit something inside me. For too long, I had been silent, letting betrayal choke me. But silence gave them power. Action would take it back. So I made a decision. The following week, there was a charity gala scheduled in the same city. Ethan and Claire had already RSVP'd weeks before it was the kind of event they wouldn't dare miss. I knew they'd be there, trying to present themselves as if nothing had happened, as if they could sweep betrayal under the rug. And that's where I would confront them, not with screams or tears, but with calm, cutting truth. I prepared carefully. I chose a sleek black dress, bold red lipstick, and a steady gaze. My mother squeezed my hand before I left, whispering, "Show them who you are." When I arrived at the gala, heads turned. Some out of shock to see me, others out of curiosity. I walked into that ballroom like I owned it, every step deliberate, my heels striking the floor with quiet authority. And when my eyes found Ethan and Claire across the room, him pale, her clutching his arm tightly, I felt no fear, just clarity. This was no longer about what they had taken from me. It was about what I was about to reclaim. And as I moved toward them, the room seemed to hush, waiting for the collision they all knew was coming. The moment I stepped closer to Ethan and Claire, conversations around the gala seemed to slow, like the room itself knew a storm was about to hit. Their eyes locked on me, and for the first time since my wedding, I felt the balance shift. I wasn't the one drowning anymore, they were. Ethan's face went pale, and he muttered my name under his breath, as if saying it could pull me back into his orbit. Claire gripped his arm tighter, but her smile wavered under the weight of my stare. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The silence between us was louder than any scream could be. I stopped just a few feet away, meeting Ethan's gaze head-on. "You once promised me forever," I said, my voice calm but sharp. "But forever meant nothing to you, and now it means nothing to me." Gasps rippled through the nearby crowd, but I didn't care. My words weren't for them. They were for me, for closure, for release, for the strength to finally cut the last thread binding me to betrayal. Ethan opened his mouth, but no excuse could save him now. Claire looked down, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. The sight should have broken me, but instead, it steeled me. Their choices had created this mess, and I refused to carry the weight of it anymore. "I wish you both luck," I continued, my tone dripping with irony, "because you'll need it. You've built your bond on lies, and lies never hold forever." I turned on my heel, leaving them frozen in the middle of the ballroom. I didn't need to stay. I didn't need to watch their faces crumble under judgment. My victory wasn't in humiliating them, it was in walking away with my head high, reclaiming the dignity they thought they had stolen. When I stepped outside into the cool night air, the weight lifted. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe without feeling like my chest would cave in. My marriage was gone, my friendship destroyed, but I was still standing. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Survival isn't about avoiding pain. It's about choosing not to let the pain define you. The days that followed were not easy. There were whispers, rumors, and endless questions. Some people wanted the drama, others wanted the details. But I stopped caring about their curiosity. What mattered was me, my healing, my strength, my future. I began focusing on myself, rebuilding piece by piece. Therapy sessions helped me process the betrayal, long walks helped me clear my head, and journaling reminded me that my story was still mine to write. Slowly, the sharp sting of betrayal dulled into something else, a lesson, etched deep but not fatal. Because here's what I learned. Betrayal doesn't define you. How you rise, after it does. Ethan and Claire thought they broke me, but in reality, they freed me from living a lie. They handed me the chance to start over, stronger and wiser than before. If you've been betrayed, you know the kind of pain I'm talking about. It cuts deep, it makes you question everything, and it leaves scars you think will never heal. But I'm living proof that healing is possible. Not fast, not easy, but possible. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away with your head high and your heart still open to a better future. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. This journey wasn't just about betrayal, it was about finding strength when everything falls apart. If you liked hearing how I reclaimed my voice, consider subscribing so you don't miss more stories like this. And if subscribing isn't for you, maybe just hit like, it lets me know you're here. You can even drop a comment to share where you're watching from, so others know they're not alone in facing life's storms. Because in the end, the real lesson is this. Even when betrayal shatters your world, you can still rebuild, and the new version of you might just be stronger than you ever imagined.